from the Luminary shop. I'm Rick, and this week we have a special project to restore a pair of Brewster carriage lamps. Now Brewster made some really fine carriage lamps. I should say that Brewster had some really fine carriage lamps made. I don't believe that Brewster actually made their own lamps. You'll see in most Brewster lamps no signature on the body of the lamps, only an engraving on the candle caps stating that they're Brewster lamps. The details on their lamps were exquisite. Their style was understated elegance. As they were used in the 1800s, Brewster lamps had a minimum of bright metal, whereas today many of the folks that have collected them and restored them and used them like a little more bright metal. I always try to talk my clients into just the original minimal bright metal, that is polished brass or polished silver, on the exterior of the lamps. That bright metal is called mounting. So silver mounted lamps or brass mounted lamps, we always try to use the minimum possible. This pair of lamps requires some replacement parts to be spun in the tops or heads. I will use my spinning lathe to accomplish that, and this first video will concentrate mainly on the spinning of those parts. So I want to introduce you to a little bit about the spinning lathe. First of all, the lathe was made by the E.O. Grabo Machine Works, and it has an 18-inch swing. It was probably made in the late 1920s to 1930s. Now, I have modified the lathe a little bit. When I got it, it had a 4-step flat pulley right here on this shaft for changing the speeds of the turning. Now, I've adapted a 4-speed transmission to do that, runs off an electric motor rather than flat belts off a jack shaft from the ceiling. Now, the first thing that I figured out that I needed was a little bit of protection, and my wife provided that for me by padding this shirt that I can wear over, and it protects my right side. If I don't wear a shirt like that, I get all bruised up and down this side of my torso because of the pressure that I put on these tools. The tools are worked off of a fulcrum and held on to the right side of your body, and your whole body is used to put pressure on that tool. So these are actually pretty small spinning tools. These are the things that I use to accomplish my spinning. First of all, and very important, is the lubricant. And I use Kirk's Castile soap. It's a little simple compared to most spinners who mix up concoctions of grease and oil and lanolin and all kinds of things that probably work a little better, but this gets me by and it works pretty good. These 3 tools are used to actually shape and form the metal. Now you can see that I have a blunt tool here that I really use most of the time for most of my spinning. And once I get it the shape that I want it, I use this tool, which is called a planisher. You can see that it has a flat side and a half rounded side, and there are various radiuses that can be used to make different forms and shapes in the piece that you're making. This is called a hook tool, and it comes in very handy for fixing things that bent a little too far or whatever. You can see that these are all polished to eliminate snagging and drag on the piece that you're spinning. For cutting tools, I use these two. This is just a regular old high-grade tool steel bit that will go in this, and I just keep advancing it as it's used up. I can sharpen it very often. It gets dulled up pretty quickly. And this is the same kind of a bit, but it's narrow, and I braze it into this piece. It lasts for, usually a year and a half or so before I have to replace that blade. So just normal bits that you might use in metal cutting on a lathe. I also find it handy to have a file for taking off sharp edges and stuff. Now, spinning has its dangers. You can lose a piece of metal to come back and hit you or hit your hand or cut your hand. I have seen where spinners have had a piece of metal come and hit them in the face, and it's not a safe thing to do if you're not really paying attention. Now, I've been lucky. I've still got all 10 digits and I don't have any big scars on my face, but I try to be pretty careful about how I go about the spinning process. I don't recommend or not recommend trying spinning to anyone. It's a rewarding and fun thing to do. But the techniques that I use, I learned myself. I had a few printed manuals early on. We didn't have internet, so I couldn't look on the internet. But I just kind of figured it out, made lots of scrap metal before I got anything to really work right. So this is the spinning the way I do it. Don't take it as a recommendation of how you should do it. So let's get started. First, I'm going to remove the heads so I can isolate the parts that need to be replaced. I'll take them apart and take the measurements that I need and go ahead and spin replacement parts. Here you can see the corroded metal that requires repairing. Now some would fill this with a Bondo type filler and just paint it up.
No one would be the wiser for a year or so, but it would eventually fail again. I'll spin the parts of brass, which should eliminate the corrosion problem. And when I'm done, these lamps should last at least another 100 years or so.
Whoops! Some of you savvy YouTubers will notice that these two shells aren't the same ones that I originally made. Well, this gunsel of an editor, yours truly, somehow I lost the clip showing how I spin these two shells together to make one compound spinning. So I made up a couple of approximations to demonstrate the process. Sorry about that.
Now you may wonder, why in the world did he go and make enough for 4 tops when he only needed 2? Well, this is a pretty common style of Brewster lamp, and it's common damage to be found on the edges of these parts. So if I ever come around to needing another set, I'll have it in the drawer. In next week's video, I'll have these heads put back together and the glass will be polished out and installed. We should be well on our way to the painting stage. Thanks for watching.